The most prominent scientist in the world, who believes we should be searching for extraterrestrial life, just looked at this week's viral UFO moon paper and said the math is wrong. His name is Avi Loeb. He runs the Galileo project at Harvard, the most serious and well-funded scientific program ever created, specifically to find evidence of non-human technology. He is not a skeptic. He has spent years arguing that dismissing anomalous phenomena without investigation is the failure of imagination that could cost us the most important discovery in human history. And when the same Ukrainian research team that published this week's moon paper published a nearly identical paper in 2022 giant objects, impossible speeds, unknown origin, Loeb ran the numbers, he found that their distance calculations were off by a factor of 10. And when you correct for that factor of 10, the objects in the footage stop being giant craft moving at hypersonic velocities. They start looking like artillery shells. This is not a story about whether UFOs are real. The footage from Ukraine is real. The observations were actually made. Something in the data triggered both papers. And the question those observations raise, whether anomalous objects exist near the moon that no current model explains, is one of the most consequential questions in the history of science. It deserves better evidence than any coverage this week has demanded. Here is what the data actually shows. Here is what the credibility record of this research team actually contains. And here is what it would actually take to answer the question properly, because that answer, if it ever arrives, will be the most important story this channel has ever covered. This is that full story, not the version that dismisses everything and moves on, not the version that says aliens are confirmed, the version that takes the footage seriously enough to ask the right question and follows the evidence wherever it leads. New here, this channel covers what is actually happening in space right now, with real science, real numbers, and real stakes. Subscribe, you will not want to miss what comes next. The paper is titled UFO Dynamics on the Moon. It was authored by Boris Zhilyaev, Vladimir Petukov, and Sergei Pokhvala, researchers affiliated with Ukraine's main astronomical observatory in Kyiv. It was posted as a non-peer-reviewed preprint, meaning it has not yet been evaluated by independent scientists outside the team in early August 2026. The observations it describes were made in two separate sessions in 2025. The first on August 16th, 2025. The second on September 7th, 2025, with two subsessions beginning at 7:05 and 7:27 Eastern Time. The instrument used was a high-speed camera attached to a telescope at an observatory in Vinarivka, a small village in the Kyiv region of Ukraine, capable of capturing 20 images per second. 20 images every second means the camera was moving faster than the human eye can track. If something crossed that field of view at high speed, it would appear as a single bright speck across just one or two frames too fast to see with the naked eye, detectable only because the software was designed to look for exactly that kind of signal. The team's software scanned every frame and flagged more than 20 signals that did not belong. They classified those signals into two categories. The first they called atmospheric objects that appeared to remain stationary relative to the moon, moving in sync with the lunar disk as though anchored to it. The second they called continental objects that appeared to move across the lunar surface at high velocity. The continental objects are the ones that generated the headlines. One reportedly moved across the moon's face at 4.1 miles per second, fast enough to cross the entire island of Manhattan in under a second. Two appeared as flat, disc-shaped objects, estimated to measure between 15 and 25 miles wide. Others appeared ring-shaped, rotating approximately once every 3 minutes. The team calculated that spin would generate enough outward force to simulate gravity, the same principle as a spinning space station in the movies. Except the researchers were claiming these rings were doing it naturally near the moon, right now. Those numbers, combined with the synchronized flashing between objects separated by hundreds of miles, led the research team to their stated conclusion: the moon may serve as a base for UFOs, and the objects observed could reach Earth's atmosphere within 20 minutes. That is the claim in the paper. Now here is what the scientific record says about the people who made it. In September 2022, the same research group, led by the same Boris Zhilyaev, published a paper describing unidentified aerial phenomena observed over Ukraine. Dark, fast-moving objects they called phantom. Objects that appeared to travel at speeds of up to 33,000 miles per hour. Objects that appeared to be between 3 and 12 meters in size. The paper generated headlines. Then two things happened in rapid succession. Ukraine's National Academy of Sciences launched a formal review. Their conclusion, published and reported by the debrief, was direct. The work contained significant errors and did not meet professional standards for scientific publication. Not, we have questions. Not, more investigation is needed. It did not meet professional standards. Then Avi Loeb, the Harvard astrophysicist who chairs the Galileo project, the most serious and well-funded scientific program currently dedicated to the systematic search for anomalous phenomena, published his own analysis of the 2022 paper. Loeb's argument was simple and devastating. He pointed out that if those objects were actually moving at the speeds the Ukrainian team claimed in Earth's atmosphere, at the distances the Ukrainian team claimed, the air resistance alone would have created an explosion visible from hundreds of miles away. Not a flash, a sustained fireball brighter than anything humanity has ever produced. Something that would have lit up the sky across an entire region of Ukraine and been caught on cameras, phones, and security footage across thousands of kilometers. No one reported it, no camera caught it, because it did not happen. The logical resolution, Loeb argued, was that the objects were not at the distances the team had calculated. They were approximately 10 times closer. And if they were 10 times closer, their apparent size and speed, when the math was corrected, matched not giant craft traversing Ukraine at hypersonic velocities. They matched artillery shells, common military projectiles, flying across a country that was at war in the sky, directly above an observatory, doing astronomical observations. Zhilyaev's response to Loeb was blunt. He called Loeb a theorist and disputed the calculation. But here's what that creates. The previous paper from this team was formally rejected by their own institution and independently shown to contain serious distance calculation errors by one of the world's leading scientists in this field. The new paper, the Moon paper, has been posted without a second telescope to confirm where the objects actually were, relying on a single camera at a single location using the same approach that failed the last time. That context matters. Not because it makes the footage fake, not because the objects in the data are certainly not there, but because the interpretation of what those objects are depends entirely on calculations that this team has demonstrated once before. It is possible to get significantly wrong. Here is the core problem with the new paper, and it is one that anyone can understand. Try this. Hold your thumb up in front of your face. Close your left eye. Look at where your thumb sits against whatever is behind it. Now switch. Close your right eye. Open the left. Your thumb appears to jump. That jump is how your brain knows how far away your thumb is. Two eyes, two slightly different views of the same object, and the brain can calculate distance. Now imagine trying to figure out how big and how far away something is using only one eye for a fraction of a second from a single location. You cannot. The image alone cannot tell you whether the thing is tiny and close or enormous and far. A moth flying past the lens of a telescope can create a bright streak that, if you assume it was at the moon's surface, calculates out to the size of a city. The assumption is everything. The Ukrainian team used one telescope, one location, no second telescope checking the same object from a different angle at the same moment. Every size estimate in the paper is built on the assumption that the objects they recorded were at the moon, not in Earth's atmosphere, not in nearby orbit, not a few hundred meters away. That assumption is not tested. It is stated. And this is the same team that made the same untested assumption in 2022 and turned out to be wrong by a factor of 10. This does not mean the objects are artillery shells this time. Ukraine was at war in 2022. The September 2025 observations were also made in a country still experiencing ongoing military activity. But the objects could also be birds, insects, satellites passing across the face of the moon, dust on the lens, a brief glitch in the processing software. The list of ordinary explanations is long, and not one of them has been ruled out, because ruling them out would require a second telescope in a second location, watching the same patch of sky at the same moment. The team did not do that. Here is what serious investigation of this question actually looks like, and why the Ukrainian paper falls short of it. In 2023, NASA assembled 16 of the world's leading scientists, astronomers, data experts, aerospace engineers, and gave them one specific job: go through every piece of unclassified information about unidentified aerial phenomena that exists. Tell us what you find. The team spent a year doing exactly that. Their conclusion was not that nothing anomalous is happening. Their conclusion was more important than that. They found that the biggest reason we do not have better answers is not a cover-up. It is not a lack of sightings. It is that the evidence collected so far is almost always too poor to draw any reliable conclusion from blurry videos. Single cameras, no second instrument to cross-check, no baseline data to compare against. Observations that would be genuinely interesting if they came with better supporting data, but that cannot be confirmed or ruled out because the data simply is not good enough. The Ukrainian team's Moon paper is a perfect example of exactly what NASA was describing. One telescope, one village in Ukraine. No second instrument anywhere. No way to confirm the distance to what was recorded. Published before, other scientists had a chance to check the work. That does not mean dismiss it and move on. It means do it again, properly. Set up 2 telescopes in 2 different locations. Watch the same patch of sky at the same moment. If the objects are genuinely near the moon, they will appear in both feeds, and the distance can be calculated exactly. If they appear in only one, the explanation almost certainly sits much closer to home. That follow-up has not been reported as planned. Now here is the part of this story that most coverage entirely missed, the part that actually matters. Something real has shifted in how seriously the world's most powerful institutions are taking this question. And it happened quietly, without the fanfare of a viral paper. The US Department of Defense now has a permanent office, staffed, funded, and with access to classified military sensor data from around the world, whose entire job is to investigate exactly these kinds of unexplained observations. Not dismiss them, investigate them. It was created specifically because the government acknowledged that some observations cannot be explained by conventional aircraft or known natural phenomena, and that pretending otherwise was the wrong response. Meanwhile, Avi Loeb, the same Avi Loeb who showed the Ukrainian team's distance calculations were wrong, has not stopped working on this question. He built a network of sensor stations that record everything in the sky above them simultaneously. Visible light cameras, infrared cameras, audio sensors, radar, multiple eyes watching the same sky at the same time. The kind of setup that would, if something genuinely anomalous flew over, catch it from multiple angles and produce data strong enough to analyze rigorously. His network's first published results did not find extraterrestrial craft. They found meteors, aircraft, balloons, satellites. Every object they caught, they could identify, which is itself important information. It means the methodology worked. It means that when something genuinely anomalous eventually passes through a properly equipped observation field, the data will be there to show it. That is the infrastructure that should be turned toward the question the Ukrainian team raised. Not to prove them wrong, not to prove them right, to find out properly, rigorously, in a way that produces an answer the world can trust. The footage exists. The white specks in the data are real signals that the camera recorded. Whether those signals represent objects at the lunar surface, objects in low Earth orbit, objects in the atmosphere directly above the observatory, or artifacts introduced during processing, that question is genuinely open, and it will remain open until someone with the right equipment performs the right observation. Here is where I stand on this. The Ukrainian team found something in their footage they cannot explain. That matters. Dismissing it without looking would be the same failure of curiosity that held back serious investigation of this question for decades. But publishing a conclusion before anyone has confirmed the basic facts, how far away the objects were, what else could explain what the camera caught, is not science. It is a headline. The footage is real. The signals are in the data. The question of what they represent is genuinely open. What it needs is not more papers built on single telescopes in single villages. It needs 2 telescopes watching the same sky at the same moment. It needs the kind of rigorous follow-up that turns an interesting observation into an actual answer. The tools for that investigation exist right now. The institutions willing to do it seriously exist right now. When that investigation happens, when someone with the right equipment points it at the right patch of sky and brings back data that can actually be trusted, that will be the most important story in the history of this channel. Subscribe. That video is worth waiting for.